today, some people we recognise. I think we've got some top fans of our Games Jam events today, going forward in the week. So I'm going to be interviewing Dawn, who is our children's librarian at Leeds Libraries. So Dawn, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all?
Yeah, I'm Dawn Stanley-Donaghy, and I'm one of the librarians at Central Library, focusing mainly on children and youth events and stock buying.
Fantastic. And you've been running games groups within Leeds Libraries for years. Can you tell us a bit about them and why you started doing them?
Yeah, I've been running games groups and geeky events at Central for nearly 10 years. We run a weekly young adults games group, a monthly cosplay group, and other one-off events throughout the year. Games are sort of present at all the groups, as well as being the focus of many of them. And my main interest in running the groups is, one, to engage with people that may be socially isolated, have social anxiety, or are anxious or on this autistic spectrum. And also the other main reason is obviously to develop social skills and encourage reading, writing and listening as well.
And why do you think games do help with young people who maybe, you know, have autistic or other, you know,
like social anxiety?
Yeah, social anxiety or anything like that. Why do you think games help with that?
Well, they may struggle to engage with other people, but once they're playing a game, it's something that's easy to talk about. You're playing the game, so you have to communicate and you have to listen to each other. It's something that's easy to talk to each other about because it's a joint interest. So the anxiety sort of dissipates there. And we've had lots of success helping people make genuine friendships and create social life. So it's been really amazing to do that. It's great to see people gain confidence and get access to a social life. It's a real joy to sort of see that. For example, like we've been doing cosplay for now 10, 12 years now, I think. And we've had one marriage and 2 cosplay babies. So, so that's been amazing. But yeah, it's just, it's such a benefit as well as like encouraging people and helping people with the reading skills and the speaking and listening skills as well. And encouraging them to sort of open the world of books as well.
That's fantastic. I can't believe you've had marriages and babies.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
wonderful. It must be so lovely to get to know all of the young people and watch them grow up.
Yeah, it's great to see them, the confidence grow and suddenly come alive, really.
I love seeing the cosplayers on a Saturday morning, I think it used to be, all over the library, taking photos in their costumes and videos.
Yeah, we have like 50 odd usually, clambering around the building in all different costumes. Literally sometimes.
It brings the library to life, definitely. So what games do you play in the groups?
Well, mainly it's led by the young people themselves what they want to play, but mainly it's like one-to-one trading games, trading card games like Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, Warhammer, also Tabletop, which is just like a tabletop army game, and Dungeons and Dragons and board games as well. So sort of the whole gamut of them. We sometimes have digital days, but that's not very often really. They prefer just the actual physical games and socialising with each other really. So we've got literary based games as well. So we've specifically bought games that are based on books, such as the Discworld board games, games based on H.P. Lovecraft, such as Arkham Horror, Cthulhu Gloom, Hobbit games, Dune games, and then other games that basically have books written about them as well. So, for example, like Warhammer has a whole publishing arm. So they've got the Black Library books that are based on all the games themselves. So that really encourages people to read. And also like D&D have books written about them. Yu-Gi-Oh's based on manga, or manga's based on Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm not quite sure which. We once did like a role play game called Dresden Files, and that had a whole series of books written either, again, I can't remember which came first, the book or the game. And that really sort of got everybody reading that series. And we actually had one lad who's he was dyslexic, and it was the first time he'd ever picked up a book to read for pleasure, and that was an amazing achievement, and he really loved it. Actually, it took him time to do it, but he absolutely loved it. So yeah, that we play like some of the games like Magic the Gathering. There's actually a lot of reading just involved in those. For example, if you can see, there's sort of several of these. Oh, I can't get. Several of these cards will be played at a time. So you're reading a chapter of a book while you're playing a game of Magic the Gathering. Warhammer, like I said, that's basically a lot of the novels that are based on Warhammer, but then also they have to read the rule book before they start. So there's the rule books to read. There's also like all the codexes, which is your army specs to read as well. And then they have to write their army specs. And we've also done a lot of work with Warhammer where people will, we've done creative writing. So they'll write about their armies, write about characters in their armies and things like that. So Warhammer is really great for the reading element of it. And then like Dungeons and Dragons as well, they have to write their character specs, and they have to read sort of this amount again, really, before you can even start to play the game. And then they have to write all their sort of game up, and they write all the characters up as well. So they have to do a lot of reading just to sort of play the games in the first place, really.
Wow.
That's what we play, and that's the literary element to it as well.
Definitely. I've never seen a rule book that big. It is like
that's just one of them. That's an old one that I've got at home that I tried to get through, but
love it. It's such a nice way to introduce reading to reluctant readers, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We've bought collections that we then lend out as well, so we actually focus the buying sometimes to the games that we're playing.
Yeah. Oh no, and I love that you can go into a really detail into different characters and their different kind of personalities or different scoring you can get from them. I think that's fantastic, and it really does introduce how to create a story, I think, as well to people. How do people get involved? Because you mentioned that they're not particularly into the digital aspect in normal circumstances, but I know that you have been doing a games group online at the moment.
Yeah, at the moment we're running it through Discord, which is like a gamers app sort of thing. So at the moment, since the first week of lockdown, we just went straight from doing every Wednesday night from Discord. So we do the same times, 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock every single week. And we've run it, apart from 1 week where we were both of us were on holiday, we've run it every single week throughout lockdown. So people would just sort of get in touch with us, and we'd get them access to the app. And through the app, what they can do is you can stream games through it. So you can chat, and all the games that we actually play can be done digitally and then streamed through the Discord app. And then a lot of we're playing Among Us quite a lot as well, which is quite fun. But normally, just people just come along to the group, and we have some rules to go through just to keep people safe, and then we have just a set of rules that they agree to, and then they just join in. Really, we advertise in our local game shops, which have been great for us, and we advertise through schools and online and things like that. So yeah, but they can just turn up.
Brilliant. And
you do get referrals from social services as well sometimes, for young people that are anxious, that really don't know what to do and are struggling to sort of find groups. So we do get referrals from social services and youth service as well.
That's brilliant. And are we okay to share your email address in the chat if anyone
Absolutely, wants to yeah. And if anybody's got any questions or anything that I can help them with, I'm more than happy to support anybody.
I think your work is fantastic with young people, and like you say, I think you've really helped them develop their confidence with socialising, and team work as well, I suppose. And we do have a question from Lucinda, and they are wondering, it can be quite a time commitment to play D&D, Magic the Gathering. How do you manage time demands with your groups when you're choosing what to do and that kind of thing?
Well, we've got like a games group. We've got there's normally about 20 to 25 young people. So there might only be 4 of them playing D&D at a time. We've got little side rooms that we can use. And basically we work from 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock. So that's ample time to get through a campaign really. And ample time to do Magic the Gathering as well. We normally fit 2 games of Magic the Gathering because there's probably like 4 or 5 people playing Magic at a time. So it never runs over. And if it does, which I think on a couple of occasions it has, just go on to the next week. They just remember where we are and pick it up again. Or they go off and do it themselves somewhere else. Like I say, because they have formed friendships now. So it's a social group in itself outside our games group.
That's great. And I think that's what's fantastic about libraries and museums, is that we can bring people together, give them the resources that they need, and then they can learn from it and go off and learn more themselves and play more themselves.
But yeah, because another thing is the amount of money involved in setting up some of these games is quite a lot of money. So if you were wanting to play Warhammer, you might have to pay £100 or so just to get an army together. So we've got armies at the group, and basically can play with our armies before they know whether they want to continue with the hobby. And it's the same with like Dungeons and Dragons. For a full set of the books, it can be like £40. It's off-putting if people can't afford it, you know. So we give them the opportunity to do it for free.
Excellent. Thank you, Dawn. If anyone has any more questions, please put them in chat for Dawn and she'll be able to answer them, or we can take them at the end as well. We've got quite a few people to go through, so I'm going to move on to Rhiannon, who's going to talk to Matt next. So thank you very much, Dawn.
Yes, so moving on to Matt Stoppard. So you've worked quite closely with Dawn over the years and with games groups, but can you just tell us a bit about some of the projects you've worked on in the library?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Rhiannon. So yeah, I'm Matt Stoppard. I'm a Communities Librarian in the west of Leeds, and I work in sort of the suburban branches. I'm going to try and share my screen, which always seems like famous last words. And just talk about some of the projects. Can everyone see that? Has it changed? Excellent, thank you. So I was very much inspired by Dawn's group about 5 years ago when I shadowed the group at the Central Library. Dawn was very much my mentor, I think, in creating similar groups in Armley and Bramley in West Leeds. So we set those groups up and just trying to copy that model of engaging teenagers. But after the first few sessions, it was really clear that the target audience was very different to the one at Central Library and had a broader age range. So the focus became families. Sorry, just a sec. So yeah, the focus became families, and we had people from all age ranges. So we had teenagers, we had adults, we had primary age children and parents as well. Is that working now? Yeah, okay. So Leeds Libraries have like a centralized selection of gaming resources, which you can borrow in for us in the suburban branches, which is what we used first. And Dawn also let me borrow some of her board games as well. But because the group was growing, then we applied for some funding and we bought our own resources. But just again, copying Dawn's model, we asked the group what they wanted. And we sort of sat around a computer and we picked different types of games, and then I bought the games on the group's behalf. We did this twice over 3 years. We also received some donations as well. So the range of games that we had was really broad. It started off with this game you can see in this picture called Orchard, which is by a board game company called Haba. And as Dawn said, it's quite expensive. Like, this is a really beautifully made game, and a 2-year-old can play this. So it's really nice that you can offer something that maybe people can't afford, or, you know, like if they've got other things to spend their money on. And then we went right up to games like Settlers of Catan, which is quite a big investment of your time. So it was really nice that you had sort of this going off here with really young kids, and then you'd have teenagers and parents playing games like Settlers. And just like Dawn did, it's going to be the theme that I copied Dawn for everything. We had sort of a digital session, but we sort of did it as versus old school games. And we did this one day in partnership with Leeds Industrial Museum, and they brought down some of their retro games in their collection. And that's Chris Sharp, who's an excellent, I think he's a communities curator at Leeds Industrial Museum. So this, I've left that area now, but the games clubs were still running. I think this is one of the last sessions I did at Bramley Library, and it was a couple of months after a refurb, and we really struggled just to get everyone in the building, it was great, but made me quite sad to leave, because the gaming sessions were my Saturdays when I worked. So it was great. All we really wanted to get out of it is what Dawn said, but also create sort of gamers of the future. One of the more popular one-off immersive, what I would call sort of a playful event or immersive gaming event, was at Armley Library. And again, we did this in partnership with the Industrial Museum, and we wanted to fuse coal mining history with Minecraft, because it was so popular. We just thought that could be the springboard for something. So the result was an event called Little Pits and Lego. So it was totally immersive. You got there and you got your little ticket that miners used to have when they went down, so you know who they were and you knew that they were coming back up. They went on Minecraft. They created a coal tub track. They built a pit head out of Lego. They made like a headlamp using little bits, which is like basic electronics. And then they went on strike, which happened in history. So they made little placards as well. So that was really nice. And Chris was there again, and he brought lots of objects from the museum's collection. So it was a really lovely event that sold out. So we were dead chuffed how that one went. And then more recently, I've been involved in creating choose your own adventure games in Twine. If you don't know what Twine is, it's an online platform, so you don't have to download it or anything. I can maybe put the link in the chat. But basically, you can use really basic coding that you would use to create a website, to create a game, or sort of a story where you have lots of avenues to go down in your story. So you choose your own path, like a sort of second person adventure role play that you'd read. I always like to do them based on books. So the more recent one was based on Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and we used images that Rianne had from lantern slides, where you were trying to find the Queen of Hearts jam tarts, and you had these 4 options here, and it would take you down different paths, and it was quite wacky. And we also did one for Robert Louis Stevenson's birthday, because we'd missed a year with COVID. I think this was 2019, for Otley Science Festival. And again, we were trying to sort of retell that story. And then just more recently, I've been working on the Lego, our digital Lego club, and the escape games, but Mark's going to talk more about that. I will stop sharing my screen and be quiet.
That was so inspiring, Matt. And obviously, I'm always over the moon if anyone uses any of our special collections or library collections. Do you feel like there's more scope for us to link kind of history and heritage collections with game making, and what benefits do you think that might have for children and anyone really?
Definitely. I mean, especially in history, because so many strange things have happened. So it sort of lends itself to creating games. And you think about things like Cluedo are of its time, but also like my 10-year-old's just getting into Warhammer. He's chosen Age of Sigmar. So we were talking about sort of woodland creatures, but and sort of folklore. So I mean that would easily fit into games as well, and kind of does with the Warhammer stuff.
And do you think it's a way for children, young people, adults who aren't naturally readers or aren't naturally interested in history? Do you think it gives them kind of that pathway into these things?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. And we find that just in the day-to-day work in libraries, that sometimes people have a bad experience with reading early on, or a bad experience with libraries. And if they're doing slightly different to just going in and choosing a book, like a games group, it is that avenue, isn't it, into reading for pleasure. So yeah, I would totally agree with that.
And of course, when we're looking at all the rule books and everything, there's so much incidental reading, isn't it, that you have to do. But I was just thinking, what do you think the benefits are kind of doing gaming online? And obviously we've had to move a lot of our work online over the last year. Are there pros and cons, or do you think there's kind of mainly benefits to kind of online digital games?
I mean, digital is sort of a leveler in terms of inclusivity, because you don't really have to go anywhere. So it's more inclusive in that respect. And creating Twine games, like I mentioned at the end there, I think one of the massive benefits of that is you have to think about storytelling. You have to think about where your story might go, and you have to think about the reader as well. Like, you have to think about your audience, which is really important. I think one of the biggest cons, though, about having only a digital platform is the social side of gaming. I think is really important. And if we're talking about autistic gamers as well, one of the best things they get out of especially when they came to the games clubs I ran, is just setting themselves up for social situations in the future. And gaming is like Dawn said, if you're focused on that one thing but you're with other people, it is great for that. And I've not probably done it as much as other people, but it's not the same on a digital platform.
That's really interesting, thank you. I think I'll now pass on to Claire and Mark.
Thank you, really intriguing. So I'm going to introduce Mark, who's developed a passion for escape games and is going to showcase some of the games he's created or adapted for Leeds Libraries. And then I'll ask him a few questions. So take it away, Mark.
Cool, thank you very much, Claire. And hello, everybody. So I'm Mark. I'm also a communities librarian, normally based in the west of the city. Excuse me, currently involved in our Lego club and our code club online as well. So I'm going to take you through a little overview of some of the escape games that I've been involved in over the last few years for Leeds Libraries. And I'm going to share my screen for starters. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that okay. Amazing. Okay, so I've been involved in devising escape games for Leeds Libraries for a few years now, and I love how effective they can be in letting participants become thoroughly involved and immersed in a story world, piecing together character and plot elements to try and reach a narrative resolution. And I think they offer us as librarians a set of brilliant opportunities to let our audiences engage and interact with library resources in different and sometimes multi-sensory ways. So I'm going to show a few escape game projects that I've been involved in. And the first was for the Summer Reading Challenge in 2017. So the theme for the challenge that summer was animal agents. So it's kind of about detectives and mysteries. And together with my then manager, Kate, we devised an escape game for children called Whodunit, based around the nefarious activities of imaginary criminal animals, such as the notorious Camilla cat. It was such good fun to put together. I have a memory of us going to the key cutters in Garforth and asking if they had any spare keys that we could have to put together in the event, and being given a massive bag of about 200 keys. And then us walking back to the library and thinking about whether or not we should try some of those keys on the doors in Garforth as we walked past them. As we were designing the event, we realized it was an opportunity to put together something that appealed to lots of different learner types. So we had logic clues in there, and we had sound and audio clues. We had kinesthetic, oops, sorry, I pressed the wrong button, far too excited. We had kinesthetic and tangible clues like ripped up receipts that you had to put together to try to piece a receipt together. And we found that the event really encouraged discussion and collaboration with each group of young detectives. And more than that, we realized that every child that took part was involved in a form of storytelling as they pieced together the story of the mystery. And I think that was one of the most pleasing elements for us as librarians, because these were events taking place in children's libraries and surrounded by stories. So the escape game format felt like a very natural fit to that environment. We've also used the escape game format to introduce school children to library skills. And we did that by creating a crime scene in some of our libraries. Some libraries needed slightly more work in being turned into crime scenes than others, so much natural fits. And so we then invited Key Stage 2 classes in to see if they could solve the crime by using library skills. It can be a little bit tricky to come up with library skills sessions that are immersive and engaging, but by setting up the crime scene, it let us bring the more procedural elements of library skills really to life. So for example, we had clues like a library card hidden inside a purse with the patron's name partially scrubbed out. We had another clue where the children had to use the online catalogue in order to find the title of a book that was then a key bit of information. We had another part where they needed to look through the subject, the non-fiction subject index, to find Dewey Decimal numbers that could then be used to unlock the combination codes on a briefcase. And again, we found that it really encouraged discussion within the groups. And it also gave us great opportunities to join in those discussions and use the investigation as a hook to chat about all things libraries. So for example, rather than kind of like standing, holding a library card, talking to a class and holding up a library card and talking about how you can get a library card, how it's free, how you can join the library, all of that, we could kind of like have that chat, but whilst they were looking through a purse, you know, and kind of like piecing together their clues. So it made it kind of like arise more naturally from the situation. And I think that really helped with the engagement and getting across those bits of information in a kind of like slightly different way. The third use of an event game that I wanted to show was the Room of Secrets, which was an interactive special collections display, which was framed around an escape game for adults. Prior to the event, Liz Cable had delivered a talk at one of our staff development days, and she spoke about how to create an escape game in a box. And the talk was really inspiring. Liz left us with a brilliant template that we could adapt to create our own games. And the Room of Secrets was put together using that template, together with brilliant help from librarians from the local and family history department. All of the clues and the puzzle materials were made using special collections resources. So we used overlaid scans from books of astral charts and illustrated fungi and moth guides. We used a map of the area from 1786. And being able to use all of those resources really helped to build up the atmosphere and the world of the event. And by constructing puzzles and clues out of special collections materials, it also gave participants a chance to kind of playfully engage with those resources in a way that they might not normally do. And the last and most recent example, and Matt's kind of like mentioned this already in talking about digital, was how we've shifted into creating online and digitally accessed packs for our Lego club through lockdown. So these are a mix of videos together with an adventure pack that you can either download at home or pick up a copy of from the library. We've created these as holiday event packs that children and families can work through at their own pace. And the packs are a mix of themed Lego builds together with hidden code word elements. When you solve all of the code words, you can unlock a secret congratulations video online. We've themed these escape games so far around the 26-story Treehouse book, and as Matt mentioned a little bit earlier, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland as well. For the Alice pack, Rianne put together a collection of images and illustrations for us to use in the design of the game, again, to help build the world of the game, and also giving a chance for a younger audience, the chance to engage with some of that material. And just to finish this overview of how we've been using escape games, I'm going to show you the teaser video for the Alice escape game, which we ran this Easter, featuring a superlative performance by Matt of this panel as the Mad Hatter, and also our awesome librarian Zoe. All I really have to say in advance of the video is check out the Lego Icky Bow. I'll start that again. Is it frozen? Sorry, I'll try playing that video again. I think I just clicked the wrong button.
No worries. Technology.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome to our party. Please take some tea to pour. The hare and I will set you a new Lego task.
There we go.
Wonderful, wonderful work. I love looking forward to the Lego videos. They always give me a little bit of a joy watching them. I like to see who's in them this month as well. So we've got a few questions already, Matt. Are we reaching, how are we reaching our participants? Is it already existing library users, or do you think we're getting new ones from these games?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in terms of the recent packs that we've put together, because they've been kind of like available digitally, we've actually found that the take-up has been really widespread. So for the first 26-story Treehouse adventure pack that we put together, I think we had over like 300 packs booked for that. And that was both in the city, but also it was kind of like wider than that as well, because essentially people could book that from like anywhere over the world, to be honest. So we had packs booked in like America and things like that. So by making it digitally available, it's definitely kind of like made that geographical reach possible. However, also to take it back to what Matt said a little bit earlier, kind of like, I guess you're kind of like taking away the social element of interaction there as well. As much as possible, when we've been putting the tasks together for the Lego escape game packs, we've kind of like tried to include family elements or game elements whereby you can bring in kind of like multiplayer and social parts to them. But yeah, we've definitely found that by making those Lego club packs available digitally, the kind of like the scope and the range of engagement, and definitely like the sheer numbers of packs that have been booked has been, I think it's like it massively exceeded what we thought was going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You've had like what, 300 participants and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's crazy, and kind of like the kind of like a really pleasing part of that from our perspective is from a kind of like a reading engagement and book promotion side of it. For the Treehouse pack, we had like combined e-borrowing figures of, I think it was about 180 ebook and e-audio loans of the 26-story Treehouse. So again, it's just like it turned out to be a brilliant tool in kind of in promoting that book and engaging readers in that book, in that audio book as well. Yeah,
fantastic work. And I just love the escape game for an introduction to the library. It's just so clever, really interactive for people.
It's very exciting putting police tape around a children's library and then inviting children into that library.
It just makes the experience so much more fun, doesn't it? And I think I think some people unfortunately still do think libraries, museums might be a bit stuffy. And I think doing it this way, I think that really gets over that barrier.
Yeah, it's also loads of fun for us. You know, it kind of we can sort of like get enroll as head detectives in kind of like 1980s chunky suits and really get into it. But yeah, it's super helpful in that respect, kind of especially with like library skills, which can sometimes feel a little bit cold, and you're always looking for ways to make them as innovative as possible. Then the escape game really, it turned out to be a really good way of doing that. Yeah,
brilliant. And do you still have the template for the Room of Secrets box? Because Middlesbrough would love to have that if you do.
Yes, somewhere. And Middlesbrough, you may need to find your own version of pagan history as a backstory. The Room of Secrets was very Winmore based, and there's a pub next to Winmore Library called the Pender's Arms, and so the Room of Secrets was kind of like it tapped into that bit of local history. So yeah, adapt it for your bit of local history that's appropriate for it. But yeah, we can certainly share that, absolutely.
Fabulous. Yeah, I think that's the fantastic thing, is that we should share across, you know, different library services what we're doing when there's really good work going on. And I could ask you questions all day, Mark, but I think we need to move over onto Izzy with Rianne. So thank you so much for showing us what you've created. And do keep asking questions in chat, people. We'll take them as well.
Just as a little extra, we did have a workshop with Liz Cable maybe last week or the week before, and that was recorded and that's on our YouTube playlist, so we can circulate that to everyone. And that was a really in-depth discussion about how to create your own escape game, and that's really what inspired us kind of a few years ago when you came to the library. But yes, I'll move on to Izzy Bartley, our person from Leeds Museums and Galleries. So how do you think games can bring kind of a more interactive, playful element to museums?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Izzy. I am the Digital Learning Officer at Leeds Museums and Galleries. And we have 9 sites at Leeds which to play across. So 2 historic houses, 2 industrial mills, and various museums spread across the city. And I think museums, potentially more than libraries, still have that traditional stuffy things, old things on display to look at. Kind of view of them, and I think partly that is still true, and I think looking at all this wonderful stuff that Leeds Libraries do, we can definitely learn loads from libraries and their approach to playfulness. We are different from libraries. We do have to balance that kind of thing with the fact that we are caring for objects, many of which are fragile. But there you have a load of robust objects as well that we can use as actual hands-on learning and hands-on playing. So I think playing and playful games and playful activities are so valuable in museum settings. I've just got a few examples of what we've been doing. Nothing yet on the scale of Leeds Libraries, but hopefully we will get there. So, oh yes, there's always that bit where whoops, let's not do that. Can everybody see my screen? I almost just logged out of my own laptop. That was great. So here this is not Leeds Library, sorry, Leeds Museums and Galleries, but it was the best photo of the traditional view of museums that I could find. And I think this is very much, especially for people who don't actually come to museums, that we want to try and get through the door now. This is still potentially the idea of what they're going to find when they get there. And fabulous objects, really interesting objects, but not just, maybe not in an engaging or displayed in an engaging way. And I think also one of the, I see as a problem that we have in museums is that we always go for the fun stuff. When I go to another museum, the fun stuff is always the stuff that's for kids. The interactives are always in the kiddie bit, and they're always billed as family activities. And if you don't have kids, or you're just a big kid who wants to play or who wants to interact, I think it can be quite, I find it quite disappointing, but it can be quite intimidating. You know, do you want to go and line up with a load of kids and push one of them, not push one of them out of the way, but like take their turn and interactive. So what I would like to see is fewer family activities and more just come and play some games, or this playful activities for everybody. And there are some people who are doing really good work in the sector around this. So John Sear and Sacha Coward are really pushing the boundaries of what can be done and what games and museums can mean. And I think going forward, we're going to see a lot more of this kind of playful stuff in museums, which is fabulous. But traditionally, you know, we've gone for like touchscreen activities and then dressing up and role playing. So one of the things that I have managed to do in our site, so Armley Industrial Mill, it was the biggest woolen mill in the world when it was completed. And in the mill, we have various machinery to do with weaving. And then we also have locomotives. So it's a bit of a difference of what's there. But we had a fabulous day looking at gears and motors and pulleys, and using coding to have a lot of fun with that and create some really fun little toys, but also going around the museum and looking at the gears and the pulleys that are used in the machines and how they're used. And because some of those machines are really robust, you know, they can be touched and things can be fiddled with. So that was a really fun thing to do, but again, that was a family activity. So the adults came along, and it was quite funny because there were you get some people who were definitely there, like the kid was just sitting there and the adults were like, yeah, I want to play with Lego. So I think there's definitely space for more adult activities that we can do. When lockdown happened, so part of my job is I manage My Learning, and My Learning is an online website, a hub website, which hosts free learning resources from arts, cultural and heritage organisations from around the country. And obviously when lockdown happened, everything switched to online home learning. And I created a digital escape game based on content that's on My Learning. And this really was designed as a safe place. So My Learning has no marketing on it, it's got no advertising on it. You don't need to log in to access any of the information. So it's safe for kids to use, as well as, and it's parent friendly as well in the way that it works. So I created this online digital escape game as a way for people to access the content on My Learning, and a kind of like an all-in-one learning activity and game. It's very much based on kind of formal education, so it's curriculum linked and things like that. And really, I'm also massively interested in how museums can help with informal learning and games, and how we can learn through games. I think informal learning can often be way more powerful than formal learning. So yeah, whoops, wow, no, I got excited as well. Sorry, Claire, I can't hear you. Brianne. Would you like me to just carry on?
Oh, do you want me to ask you some questions now? I'm just getting so interested with your slides. No, it's been really interesting to see how museums and libraries are trying to change that perception of what we do and how we engage with our audiences. We've had quite a few discussions over the last few weeks about representation and diversity within games, and how we can kind of help challenge that or kind of encourage more diversity. I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so this is something that I've become really interested in, as you can see my slide. I used to play loads of games when I was a kid, played games all through growing up family, and then I've got much more into the hobby game, board gaming more recently. And it's something that's, I think is really important, again, for what we're doing in terms of trying to help reflect our communities and help bring them in, get them through the door. And this was a game here from Alicat Games that was just on Kickstarter recently, and this really drew my eye, well, frankly because it's beautiful, but they actually hired somebody to do cultural research for them. So in order to make sure that their drawings were culturally accurate, even down to the colors that they used in the game. And I think this is something that board games can really, there's an area where board gaming can really improve on, is the representation, and they even not just having men and women, but also the way that those women are represented in the games. And this to me, I hope this is what's going to go forward. And I think museums and libraries have a really interesting role here in helping game designers to make their designs more inclusive. So I think I've skipped across, oh no, here we go. So these are just a few games that I found that I think are really interesting and are changing or have a different view on how they are presenting their characters. So this is a role-playing game called Spire's End, and this character here, Hildegard, the designer of Spire's End, he is actually creating a whole spin-off game, another role-playing game with Hildegard, and she just looks fab. You know, she just looks like you would not want to mess with her. And it's very different from how a lot of women are presented in role-playing games. You know, she is actually wearing clothes for a start, which is a bonus. And she's obviously got a bit of attitude. So I think I've just got a few examples of things that I found were quite interesting. So this game called Claim 2 is a trick-taking game. And I found this interesting. My game collection isn't huge, but this is the only game that I have where the characters are very different body type. They are all white here, and there is definitely a lack of diverse skin color in characters, I think, in board games. But I found that this game was interesting because of its use of non-stereo. Well, yeah, I mean, we've got the stereotypical old witch here in the middle, but I just thought it was an interesting take on how to create characters. This game here is Century by Gollum Edition, and I did notice that they had chosen to use a diverse range of characters in here, from using different skin colors, but also different ages of their characters. And again, the women are clad in clothing to do with their role, which is not always the case in lots of games. And there's quite often a problem with games with not having enough female characters to play. So this game is called Oh My Goods, and it solves that problem so easily and so simply by having, this is one player card, and I've just taken a photo of both sides of it. So as the player of the game, you can choose to be male or female. And I also like the fact that they are pretty much dressed the same and both have a huge axe hanging from their belts. And again, you can talk about whether the characters are diverse. I mean, they're not, but they have actually enabled, and you know, if 4 women want to play this game or 4 girls want to play this game, they can. If they want to play as a girl, then they can. Whereas normally you might, if there are 6 characters in the game, often 1 or 2 of them might be female characters. So I just thought this was a really interesting way to solve that problem. Okay, oops. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. I won't go into that. But I think that I'm hopeful that, like Alley Cat Games, more game designers are going to be looking to diversify their content. So there's a game called, just forgotten the name of it. Furnace, sorry, there's a game called Furnace from Hobby World. And they were bringing out their game. They're a Russian game designer, and they were bringing out a second edition of their game. And I heard they were looking to diversify the content in it. So it's a game about 18th century industrialists, and the characters were pretty much all male. So I got in touch with them, and I just emailed them and said, look, if you're looking for female characters, historical characters to base a character on in your game, here's Betty Beecroft from Leeds. And Betty Beecroft took over the running of Kirkstall Forge and turned it around and made it incredibly successful in the 18th century. And they were great, and they got back to me, and I'm really hoping that in the future, one of their expansions, they might actually feature Betty or a character based on Betty. And I think this is where we can really help with that, as well as actually making museums more playful in itself, to actually work with designers to dig up those characters and those stories that can be then incorporated into games. Because I think informal learning, if kids and adults are playing games and all the characters are male, or the women are scantily clad, that's learning. People are absorbing that as a norm, and I think we've got a role in challenging that in the sector. So I feel like I've really warbled on there.
No, it's so interesting. It's such an important part of all this that we need to kind of think about. And I just think it's so exciting that you might have an actual Leeds character, woman who's, and I think we did quite a lot of work recently about trying to promote some of these kind of Leeds stories and Leeds women. Is there anything more that we can do as libraries and museums to make our resources more well known, or for developers to use or for artists to use? I know it's probably quite a big challenge that we both have.
Yeah, I think getting in touch with them directly can actually be quite helpful, but promoting the work. So obviously Leeds Libraries is doing huge amount on this type of thing, and using your collections, and with the Games Jam that's coming up this weekend on Itch.io, that's based about using some of your resources as well. And I think there's a whole genre of wargaming, which generally tends to be more based on history, some of them. But I'd love to see more even more objects from museums as game pieces or as objects in games. And I think getting the message out there. I think I'm kind of hopeful that as more online collections come around, and places like the Rijksmuseum, they have opened up their entire digital image collection online, and you can use it for whatever you like, even commercial purposes. And in fact, they encourage that, and they run a competition every year for artists and designers and product makers to use their images. They're so high res that you can print them on like a car. And so I think that the message will be getting out there slowly, but it would be, and the idea about historical accuracy, I think, is becoming, and cultural literacy is becoming more popular in the gaming industry.
I think that's something that the British Library do really well as well, and Stella Wisdom from the British Library is going to be on our panel tomorrow. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, then please join us tomorrow, where I'm sure she'll talk about all the kind of Creative Commons images and work that you can use for that as well. But hopefully there's kind of a positive trend, more things being open source and just for more people to use as they want. But yes, we go to more general questions now, Claire. But thank you so much, Izzy. That was really interesting.
So you guys have all inspired me as usual. I think you're fantastic, and I've learned a lot, and I think our audience has as well. So if there are any more questions, please put them in chat. I know that we're running over a little bit now, but you might have a sneaky minute or two to learn a little bit much. The only complaint we've had today is that this is far too interesting for just 1 hour. I agree, we'll have to do a longer one next time. I've put the link into tomorrow's, into chat for tomorrow for Stella's talk, who's here today. She's talking to us in chat at the moment, and Anne as well, who's here from Cards or Die. We've put the playlist link in there as well, and I've also put a survey link. It's very short, please do fill it in. It just means that our funders will know that we've done this, and we can take any tips that you have for us. Let's have a little look in chat. What have we got in here? Really interesting. Ooh, got a job interview. And you'd like to host one. Fantastic. So tomorrow is the start of our games jam at 9 o'clock in the morning. If you go over to our Eventbrite, you can join up and you can submit a game on Itch.io if you want to. We have 150 quid for the winner and £50 for 2 runners up as well, thanks to our sponsors, the Arts Council, Libraries Connected and BBC Arts. So please join us. Your game needs to be inspired by one of the BBC Novels lists. And if you want to, you can join us for a VR, virtual reality event with Rosie Summers tomorrow evening as well. And that's going to be so good. Me and Rianne had a little preview of that and kind of nearly cried. It's so good. We will share the recording. Yes, well, the playlist is in the chat, but we will also email out the links and kind of Google Drive folder as well for anything else that we discussed today. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to our librarians and our Izzy for joining us, and have a lovely rest of the day.